everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you today. It is time for another amazing Spider-Man retrospective video. I am very excited about this one. This is we're going to be looking at Amazing Spider-Man number 27 today, and it's actually a comic book that I had growing up in a reprint form. And so this is a comic book I'm extremely familiar with. It's one that I've read a million times. I think personally it really influenced and contributed to my own art, my own storytelling. There are things as I've looked back on this, especially for this video, where I see and I go, yeah, I've used that technique, or I've used that camera angle, or things like that. So this one is near and dear to me. And I hope you enjoy it as well. Of course, I just want to start by thanking everybody who has supported the channel and supported this project of reviewing these amazing Spider-Man issues. We go back all the way to Amazing Fantasy number 15, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man. So if this is your first time jumping onto one of these videos, take a look. There is a playlist available here on the channel, and you can go back to the beginning and catch all the way up. It's like I said, this is a good one. If you haven't watched the previous episode featuring issue 26, that one I would highly recommend. Pause this video, go back and read it, because this is an ongoing story. We'll see that in just a second, but this one starts off seconds after the ending of issue 26. So if you're not familiar with what happened, you may be a little lost here. So anyway, we want to get into it. But before we do, let me just show you this. So this is the Marvel Tales Marvel Tales starring Spider-Man, and this is issue 165 of this comic, but features issue number 27. One of the things I did know, I went through and I compared, page by page with the PDF that we're going to look at here, and there are some differences with the coloring. It looks like they did recolor this. However, this book was made in 1984. So I got this when I was 10. They did not have computer coloring back then. So the coloring in here is still the same process and technique. On newsprint, it looks very much like the original. Most of the colors are there, with the exception of a few changes to, usually it's background details. But I'll kind of throw them out and I'll mention it and then try to show you a little bit where some of the key differences are. There's no differences in the pages, anything like that. There's one exception at the very end. We'll get to that. But anyway, just wanted to show you. I actually have it, and let's cut over to the PDF version, and I'll show you the difference. So here we go. So this is a PDF scanned copy of the original comic. So this was scanned in 2004, and as you can see, it is the exact same layout and composition of the cover. The only difference is the color. And I don't know if it's the scan or the age of this comic book. This tends to happen with these scans, especially for the covers for some reason. And I don't know if it's just 2004 scanning technology versus today, but it's much, much darker. So the original had more of an indigo blue background behind it. And the Goblin here, his torso was more of a dark purple. But we still have the yellow around Spider-Man, which we had on the reprint. You see the figures popping out. To be honest with you, I kind of like the yellow in the background, and then having the title here in blue, which it is for the reprint, only because the yellow pops all the figures, including the Goblin. So even in the original, where it's indigo and not black, and this is purple, those two colors are very, very close, and you kind of lose the Goblin's torso in that dark blue background. So again, for me, I like the bright yellow. I did note as well. This is also done on the reprint. Is this idea of using neutral colors in the extreme foreground to separate what's close versus what's further. This is a coloring technique that they used a lot, just because again of the printing technology and the options you had. You didn't have every color in the rainbow available to you to print, so you had to make some choices about how you would separate when you have overlapping things, and you wanted, in this case, use color to do that. So by using a neutral in the foreground, then you can have figures in the back that are wearing different colored suits or different colored clothes, and it just, again, helps separate them out. So we jump right into... I'm sorry, one more note here. I mentioned this on the last issue where I felt like the cover had too much empty space, or what we refer to as negative space. So you had all these figures, you had a couple figures, and you had all this empty space around it. This one uses the space much, much better. Perfect. There's not dead air, dead space in this image. It's packed in, and that's what I think makes it a more effective cover. We jump in right into, like I said, seconds after the end of the last issue. The Green Goblin had knocked out Spider-Man with a bomb and had shown up to ruin. This is the Crime Master, right? Crime Master. Sorry, he's the Crime Master, and he is trying to unify all of New York's mafia or organized crime, let's say, under his control, which is also something the Green Goblin has been trying to do for a few issues now, and he is going to do this as a way to usurp the Crime Master's plans, because they'll follow the guy that beat Spider-Man. So here we go. As well, note, edited and written by Stan, plotted and drawn by Steve Ditko, and Artie Simic as the letterer. Interesting still, no color credits at this time. Later, we'll see you will have individual artists credited as colorists, which is pretty standard today, just not at this point in time. So here we go. Good splash page. I love jumping right into the story as opposed to that sort of second cover on the inside. This to me is a more traditional comic book storytelling component. So they chain him up, and just a story note again, if you didn't see the previous couple issues, Spidey has lost his costume, and he had to purchase a store-bought costume that doesn't fit right. And so in order to keep it from sliding down, or like the gloves and boots or mask falling off, he has webbed the costume together with his webbing. So these guys are trying to pull the mask off, and the mask won't come off because Spidey webbed it up. So that's a plot point on how you can have your unconscious hero not have their identity exposed. Really good storytelling there. And again, a throughput of the story that I have to believe was obviously part of the plot, because it's featured very heavily in the artwork. It's not a dialogue that somebody mentioned. It's actually shown. A lot of close-ups here. Again, I like using a close-up foreground element to show depth, especially when you have a small panel like this. So you have, the Crime Master in the close-up looking at the Goblin, and vice versa. Then we flip the camera around to the other direction. Now the Goblin is in the foreground, and we see the criminals behind the Crime Master, and they're turning on him. And now we go into the crowd. So this is a nice little sequence of moving the camera from the key players, from Crime Master to the Goblin to the crowd. And again, more using that neutral color in the foreground very close to separate out, so you don't have this mix of where does one figure start and the other end. That can get a little muddy when you only have a couple of different flesh tones to use, right? So we didn't have computer coloring, didn't have the shading options, so this is a great way of just separating your foreground, middle ground, background elements. This guy here with the patch on his eye, he is a police informant, and he has notified the cops of what's going on. So he's going to play into the story as well. We'll keep an eye out for him. No pun intended. Same thing here now. Spidey has regained consciousness, breaks away. Things are about to get heated. This issue for 20 pages has a ton of action in it. And this is where it all kicks off here, right? We're right in the story. There's no ramp up. We are right into it. And here we have a whole crowd of people attacking Spider-Man. I mentioned this here. Great crowds. So if you've never drawn a comic and you've never had to draw a crowd scene, it's surprisingly more difficult than you would think. It's hard sometimes to come up with unique characters or individual faces. We're all used to drawing Spider-Man over and over because he's the hero, or the villain like the Green Goblin over and over. But when you need random cop number 1, cop number 2, cop number 3, you need something. So, we've identified one guy's a redhead. One guy appears to be African American. What's their uniform look like? Stuff like that. The gangsters, you're putting them in different positions as Spidey's trying to shake them off. People's hands are raised. In order to have a good crowd, especially like this where it's a fight, it's like a brawl, there needs to be chaos. There needs to be limbs all over the place. There needs to be people getting punched and fists being thrown and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a lot harder than you would think. And Steve Ditko here does an amazing job of putting in the time and the patience to actually go through and draw all this crowd. You could focus in on just the characters that have dialogue, but then you lose the sense of how many people are involved. So great job there. This pose is awesome. Spidey bursting the chains. Very Superman-esque, I said, and they even make a little joke here about Steve Reeves, which I think is cute, but definitely an iconic sort of superhero pose of him breaking out of the chains. We don't think of Spider-Man usually as a powerhouse kind of character. We think of like the Hulk, you think of the Thing, you think of Thor, of course, Superman himself, right? But Spider-Man is super strong, and this is a great way to show that in a very dynamic and exciting pose. So great panel there. Love it. Awesome stuff. Showing off his agility. I really like this panel right here. We have it's a low shot. So it's the camera is down below the figures looking up through them. So you've got this face being punched. You can see this is a terrific dynamic action. The arm coming across the face, the eye looking down, the arm cocked up, and even the wrist cocked over like that really shows the action and the swing of that punch without having to have things like the motion lines and stuff like that. But then what we're doing here is we have Spidey up top as he's moving through the rafters before he jumps back down into the action. And the reason that I really like this here is it works with the dialogue. And what I mean by that is this was a great use or great collaboration in this case with Stan and Steve. Sometimes the two didn't see eye to eye. I think that's been documented pretty well. And sometimes the story reflected that. There'd be things going on and the dialogue doesn't reflect it. However, this is great. Spidey's up above and his dialogue says the officers are putting up a great fight against the hoods down there. They could use some help. You could have focused in on Spidey like this panel here where he's talking about his camera. You could have focused on him and he could have been looking down and his thought balloon could have said the exact same thing. But here's what we did. We showed it. So in comics, this is a visual medium. Yes, there's dialogue. Yes, there's words. Yes, we have writers. But at the end of the day, it's still a visual medium. And so you need to show, not tell. You can enhance what you're showing with dialogue as we do here. But if we close in and crop in and just see Spidey and he's looking down telling us what's happening, but we don't see it, it loses all the impact. So this is a great use of that shot, a great time basically this whole issue is a great example of how your hero doesn't always have to be the focus of the panel or the page to still be affecting the story. So again, here, this is a perfect example. And then this is terrific. Another great wide panels. I love wide, large cinematic panels. We don't see enough of them at this stage of the game in terms of comics and comic history. So I love seeing it when we have it. Terrific angle of Spidey leaping down. So not only do we see him leaping in a dramatic perspective pose, but then you also see the crowd below. They've got the cops against the wall, and this one guy turns back and sees what's coming. The rest of them don't even know what's going to happen. And here comes Spidey and just knocks them around. Great bit here. So this is what I was talking about before. If you didn't read the previous issue, his costume is coming loose because he's used webbing on the seams to hold it together, and that webbing is dissolved. And so now in the middle of the fight, he's tugging the costume back into place, and then we see here he's webbing it back into place. Again, more with the show, don't tell. We could have just had a panel of him, really focusing on this costume. He's just kind of mentioning it as he's trying to pull it together while he's fighting, and we're seeing the costume slipping around. So again, great way of mixing together both your visual media and your dialogue to enhance the overall effect of what the story is supposed to be. Right here, like I said, he doesn't even mention, gotta web my costume back up. He's just doing it, and we see it in the art, and we know what's happening. That's a really nice pose here as he's kind of leaping over the heads of the crowd, shooting some webbing, the Crime Master taking a pot shot at him. This is a great pose here. I mentioned this great camera placement. So we've talked about this in past episodes where your camera is the eyes of the reader. And it's important to not have the same exact angle all the time. So for example, over here on this page, we have a profile shot. We are basically, our eyes are kind of at maybe chest level, right? It's kind of that center of the panel of the figures here. We are perpendicular to them, meaning we are at a 90-degree angle looking at them, and the cops are punching the bad guys. If we kept this angle for the next shot and the next shot and the next shot, it would become boring. But what we do, especially over here on this page, I thought it was really good. We have this angle, so we're slightly above looking at the cops wrangling up all the crooks. Then we have an image of the Goblin coming towards us, shooting back at Spidey. Again, another example where your hero doesn't have to be the center, the focus. And then we cut back in the other direction. The Crime Master's running away, and he's coming towards us. And Spidey is so far in the background, he's just a little dot. Or I guess, actually, I think he's around a corner, shooting webbing around a corner, maybe, is what that is. But I really, really like the use of moving that camera around in different positions. It just creates more energy. This is one of the biggest things I would say about this. If I went back to talk about this issue as a whole, it is fast-paced. I mean, we can see it's just action, action, half a second pause, leap, action, punching, fighting, webbing, leaping, escaping, running, flying. All this stuff is just, every panel is a new action and a new motion and a new piece of energy and story. And that's probably why this appealed to me so much. As a kid, even though it was to me at the time, it was an old story. It just felt, it felt current. It felt as, like it was an action-packed modern comic. So I really got into it. Let's see. Yeah. So I mentioned that here, more again, the pacing, small panels. So, I've talked about this in previous episodes as well, so bear with me if you're a longtime viewer. Comic book pages are drawn on 11 by 17 paper. All the panels, all the artwork is typically within a 10 by 15 roughly size. So your panels aren't super big. If you only have 10 inches across, you split your two panels in half, and then there's this gutter in between, which, is depending on the artist, is whatever size they want it to be. These panels are probably about 5 inches square. So that means these are even smaller. They're probably about 5 inches tall and somewhere around 3¼ inches wide. So not very big, but small panels like this, when you have things happening, not just trying to fill it with talking heads, which is really tough. We've got action here. That makes it fast pace. And that's exactly what we want, right? This guy's shooting at him, at Spidey, and he's ducking. There's a close one here. This is a great close up to show how close that shot came. And then we flip it where, Spidey's frustrated by this guy shooting at him. This guy's frustrated by Spidey's webbing. He can't get a clean shot. Now we go back and forth again. More. He's shooting. He's so close. He hits the pier. Spidey's shooting the web. Great pacing, fast-paced action. I will say in the this is one of the bigger differences in the reprint that I thought the reprint got right, and I'll show you here. We'll cut back to my camera, and in the reprint, this whole section is done in these blue tones, to emphasize that they're in the dark. Right, that it's night, or at least, probably night, dusk, probably. They're underneath the pier, so between the water and the shadows and stuff, it's done in the blue tones to really emphasize the darkness. I thought that was a much better solution. So let's go back to the book. So the Crime Master is going to escape into the sewers, and he sets off some nerve gas behind to take out Spidey. So of course, webbing solves all. What did my note say? Where is it? Webbing solves all. That's exactly what I wrote down. So he makes a helmet to help himself hold his breath, and keep the gas, I guess, out of his eyes and nose through his mask. So there we go. Web helmet will save the day. I did note this. So he busts out of this tunnel and realizes that he's in a large area where he's lost him. He's lost the Crime Master. There's no way he's going to follow him. He's going to be able to track him down with his spider sense. Again, great stuff with foreground elements being really big. We recognize these are pipes, and then Spidey in sort of that background, and then an even deeper background. Now, again, as I mentioned, into a lot of today's comics, people would have said Spidey punching his way out of a sewer grate with this green gas behind him. That's an action shot. Like that's a big shot. You would want to really emphasize that. You would close in on Spidey doing it. You probably make the panel really big. It's going to help sell that page. I'm going to put tons of detail in it. It's going to be really, really cool, right? It makes Spidey look cool, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't help the story. The story here is that he has run into this large area that the Crime Master has used to escape him. If you zoom in on Spidey punching through the grate, you lose that vastness of this area. And again, we're talking about a panel that's only originally drawn in probably 5 inches by 5 inches. So if you want to show that vastness, show Spidey small and have that area all around. And I think this is terrific storytelling. I know there's a lot of people, again, that might disagree with me and say, the cool shot of Spidey breaking through the tunnel would be way better. But again, it's about the story, and I think this serves the story much better. So again, another great example, artists out there, your hero is still the center of the story, but sometimes the story has to take place first. And this is a great example of where it's important to have Spidey small for the sake of the story. Let's see here. Again, I put here again, great camera moves. This is really nice. You know, he's coming up out of the street, so we have a nice low ankle shot where we're, you know, again, if you were filming this with a camera, you'd be crouched down or laying on your belly on the street as he pops up out of the manhole cover. Then we cut down to the cameras up above the building as Spidey climbs up. Terrific way to show that. I always love these panels of Spidey climbing up or down a building, adding that perspective and giving us a sense of the height and scale of these New York buildings. And then now the camera moves behind him to show the scene. And all it is a cop car. But again, it shows he's talking about the cops and how they've busted all these criminals. And we show the cop car. And now we cut around to in front of Spidey, another down shot looking at him swinging off. In 5 panels, we have 5 different camera moves. And it's a terrific way to just keep the energy going, the pacing, the movement we feel as viewers, like you're moving through the scene, as opposed to if we kept it very static and showing the same kind of shots over and over. Let's see here. So as I mentioned this as well. This is the same thing. Again, we're moving the camera around a lot, and where this comes into play and why it's so important in the next couple pages is that these are what we call talking head pages. So basically, we're down to the last kind of few pages of the issue, and we've got a lot of story that's got to be told. There's a lot of narration here. There's a lot of dialogue, and we need to get through it. And sometimes the only way you do it is 2 or 3 people standing in a room talking to each other. That by itself is not exciting. How do you make it exciting? You move the camera around. And you show, you know, so we're on one side of Jonah. Now we're sort of on the other side behind Spidey again. Now we're to the side of Jonah over here, looking at both Frederick Foswell, who's a reporter that Spidey suspects is the crime master, but as we can see, he's clearly not. And don't forget, Frederick Foswell was a criminal in an early issue of Spider-Man called The Big Man. And he was arrested, did his time, and he's come back, and now he is a reporter again. So Spidey's kind of questioning him because he believes he's the crime master, possibly even the Green Goblin. But great ways of moving the camera. So now we're looking through the window at the 3 of them, right? Now it pans back a little more. We see a shadow. I love the brick shadow. We've talked about this in other issues as well, where Steve Ditko has done this. Instead of drawing all the bricks and then shading in the ones that are in shadow, you show the hint of bricks by just showing the shadows. Excellent. And with the hat and the glove here, we know it's the crime master. And there's a little tip back here. He's here with his gun. He's trailing Spidey and was going to try to shoot him. Spidey's spider sense should have gone off. I'm just saying. But anyway, we zoom out even further. So through the close up through the window, zoom out even more. Now we flip the camera around. We see the crime master, and we see that the cops have caught up with him. Again, flipping the camera all the other way around. So now you see the cops over here, and there's gunfire. We're behind our characters that we're talking. So now we're looking out through that window. Flip the camera around again. Now we're using the window frame as a framing device, again, to show we're looking at the other direction, and back again. So again, every panel, that camera is moving in a very dynamic and deliberate way to help keep what is tons of dialogue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 dialogue balloons, including the thought balloons, and a narration in one page in 7 panels. That's a lot. And so great way to keep the readers interested visually by moving that camera around. So the Crime Master has been shot and he's dying, and he's going to reveal. Remember in the previous episode, or previous episode on the previous issue, we identified, or they explained, that the Goblin and the Crime Master know each other's identity. I don't know how the Crime Master knows the Goblin's identity, but I think maybe they told each other, like, as a safety check. Like, if you betray me, I'll rat on you, and if I betray you, you rat on me. But the whole time they're trying to take each other out. So I don't know. But anyway, they somehow know each other's secret identities, and before he can say who the Goblin is, he dies. So we cut over here, and then Foswell explains who the Crime Master was, and he was just this. He wasn't much of anybody. He was just a criminal. He was just this Nick Lucky Lewis, and Spidey says the same thing. He's like, I don't even know who that is, and but Foswell knew him when he was in prison and knew that he might cause trouble, and so he was investigating the story. So Foswell was not the bad guy. This is a really nice close-up of Foswell as he's going through and explaining stuff. Another shot here. And then, again, we've got the costume is coming loose bit running through, which is kind of, now we're going to get into some humor with it, which is pretty good. So Spidey's not 100% sure about Foswell, but, I mean, he could be the Green Goblin. That's kind of out there, right? But there's no proof, so Spidey takes off and goes to get his camera, and the camera's gone. So this is a great close-up. I like this with his spider sense going off. It's somewhere behind him, somewhere, so he's kind of turning towards where he senses it. And I really like the hand, the arm pose. Very, very nice stuff. Turns out it's just some kids. Spidey, of course, Parker Luck, right? He hits a bad plank in the dock and ends up in the water. But again, all for comedy purposes. Gets his camera back and starts swinging away. And now that the costume has gotten wet, it's starting to shrink. This panel particularly I thought was terrific. This is a great swinging pose, by the way, for Spidey. Just how flexible he is. Again, Spidey is such a great character because the costume is so iconic, and the way that he moves is so iconic. Even characters like a Batman that has a swings with a grappling hook, or Daredevil, they don't move the way Spidey does. And then with the costume, you don't have to show his face. You recognize exactly who it is. But I love this one where he's pulling the mask off, that it's shrunk, and he says it's pulling his scalp off. But that pull I always felt as a kid reading it, and even now, it really feels like it's pulling on this face. I get that sense. I can feel what that would feel like. And then I noted as well, this sound effect of whap as you throw a wet clothing item on the ground is the perfect sound effect. If you ever, you go swimming, you got your towel, you got your swimsuit, whatever, in that wet clothes, when you take it off and it just whap on the floor, it's exactly what it would sound like. It was perfect. One more thing here I did like. I'll show you in the reprint. It's subtle, but I think it's a nice touch that's kind of missed here. So cut back to me real quick. So in the reprint, as Peter is developing his photos, they did all in red tones because he's in a dark room, and you use red light in a dark room. So I thought that was really smart. That's a really nice use of the coloring. You can see up above as well, like they changed a little bit of like the background. Instead of green, it's kind of an orange. They did that a lot with the buildings. A lot of the buildings recolors tended to be more browns and greens, or browns and oranges, tans, instead of sort of greens and grays. Not a big deal either way. It doesn't change the story at all. Just a nice touch, I thought. So back here, and Peter goes to sell his photos to another paper because he's tired of Jonah being stingy. But this guy is just pushy, and he just wants to know Peter's secret, how you did it. And he's like, listen, man, I think I'll pass. So I think he does sell the photos to this guy one time, but after that he goes back to the Bugle. And here's Jonah. Of course, he's all excited because he's taking all the credit for Foswell's investigation and figuring out who the crime master was. And this smile, anytime you see J. Jonah Jameson smile, it's creepy. It just has a very weird look to it. But I also think this really speaks to what Steve Ditko was able to do with faces. So normally, again, if you look, even like today, if you look at a Spider-Man comic that features J. Jonah Jameson, he doesn't have these kinds of wrinkles, creases, the loose skin, the fat in his face, moving and bending. You're going to draw the face and he's going to look much younger. This is real. This is like these lines. This isn't a young man. He's got gray on the side. I know how he feels. But, this is what happens. When a face smiles, it changes. It's not just the same face you always put and then you just slap a smile across it. It changes. It changes the way your cheeks bunch up and these, the lines under the chin and the crow's feet around the eyes. Just terrific attention to detail on how the musculature and skin of a face really moves. And something that Steve Ditko just did better than most. So, and then here's another thing that he does well. So Peter can't find the costume that Aunt May found. So he had a spare costume. Aunt May found it and disposed of it. So now he has no costumes at all. So now he's got to make one. And this is very cartoony. Like this is straight out of like Little Abner, Sunday morning comic strips in the newspaper kind of face. Done specifically for comedy. He's trying to thread a needle. The tongue is sticking out. The one eye is huge. The other one's squinted shut. Really cartoony. And that's what Steve Ditko could do, right? You could go from something very serious to something very cartoony and then back. And then you look over here at sad Peter. He feels bad. Aunt May is lonely and he's always busy. So he decides to do something about it. But you feel his emotions. This is, while it has an element of cartooniness with the big eyes, the emotion is there. And this is really, really good. And again, just speaks to his strengths. What could Steve Ditko do well? Just about all of it. I mean, you've got this action here with crazy costume characters and swinging around and webbing and fighting and all this kind of stuff. And then you just get to a real quiet moment of just an introspective, kind of sad young man. So really powerful. Great stuff. And then we get to the end, and turns out Foswell's secret is that he was this guy Patch. So if you remember very early on in like the first or second page, like second page of the comic, we mentioned this guy Patch was the informant and had told the police about what was going on earlier. He was Patch. So that's his secret. So he's not the Goblin. So the Green Goblin's secret identity is still secret. And that is how we wrap up the issue. And so we get to here and we're all done. Now, in the back of the reprint, so again, all the pages of the storytelling are the same in the reprint issue, except by 1984, they were doing 22 pages in a comic instead of 20 pages. And so they were able to do more with, some of the pages in terms of numbers don't line up exactly because of the ads and stuff like that. So but it doesn't change the story, it doesn't change the page turns, it's all there. But the point is they had to add a page in the back. So they found this pinup that Steve Ditko had done of the crime master. And so this is in the back of the reprint, which is not in the actual issue. So just thought I would share that with you. So there is episode number 29 for issue number 27 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Like I said, I was a big fan of this story arc. It kind of covers over 3 issues, kind of culminating here with this one. And yeah, it's fun, tons of action. I mean, just absolutely loved it. And I thought it was terrific. For me, some of it maybe is nostalgia. Like I said, I got this comic when I was 10 and I've read it a zillion times. Out of 10, I would give this a 9. This I think is a terrific issue all the way through. There's no dead points. There's no boring story points. The art is on task. I mean, he's nailing it. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. Love this issue. So there we go. And we're looking forward to issue number 28. I won't tell you who it is, but we do get another new villain. So we kind of go back to, hey, we're going to introduce some new characters, some new villains. So we're going to have a new villain discovery here in issue number 28. And I hope you come back to check it out with me. Thank you for subscribing. If you have, thank you for checking out these Spider-Man videos. They do come out every Monday at 8 a.m. So don't be afraid to check the notification bell as well as the subscribe button here to make sure you don't miss any future issues. So thank you so much. Great talking to y'all, and we'll see you next time for more Spider-Man. Thanks.